today I thought that we could talk a little bit about our emotions and how they can get trapped in our bodies. So, our thoughts are electric and masculine, where our emotions are magnetic and feminine. So, let me say that again. Our thoughts are electric and masculine, where our emotions are magnetic and feminine. So that doesn't necessarily mean just because they're feminine that's why women are more emotional. It's just that that's how it is, polarity wise. Okay. So when I've talked in previous episodes that our thoughts can kind of create our reality. And when we send those thoughts out there, they're electric. And when they're masculine, they're very, very strong and assertive, and they bring whatever we are thinking back into our reality, where our emotions are very magnetic. So when we are in a state of sorrow or sadness, we have a tendency to attract or magnetize others who are in a state of sorrow or sadness too. And these emotions can get trapped in our body, and they can get trapped from the size of say a penny all the way up to the size of a cantaloupe, depending on where they decide to move. And these emotions are energy. And like I've talked about before, is that everything is energy. And so when we don't process our emotions properly, they become very, very energetic, and they can grow, and they can find a way in the body to get stuck. And they're just trying to find their little happy place. And sometimes it can be in our shoulder, it can be in our lower back, or they can get stuck in areas that can cause us disharmony and discomfort. And if we aren't properly processing those emotions, whether it be through consciously recognizing that emotion, maybe we've gone through a loss or a death, and we decide that we want to just, stuff it down and focus on work and really distract ourselves with other things in our lives, that emotion is not going to go away. It's going to just grow bigger and bigger, and it's going to find its own little place to sit in the body until we actually sit down and take a look at it, right? So if we aren't properly processing those emotions, they can grow and grow and grow, and they create these larger and larger and larger balls of energy that get trapped in our body. So where do certain emotions have a tendency to get trapped in the body? So when it comes to our heart and our small intestine are connected when it comes to these different areas or chambers that I'm going to talk about. So the heart and the small intestine, you can have certain emotions like abandonment, betrayal, heartache, of course. Insecurity is a big one that gets trapped in the heart. The feeling of loss or love unreceived, like maybe you're giving out a lot of love, but you're not receiving a lot of love. And that in itself can cause a trapped emotion to get trapped in the heart area. Vulnerability, right? When we're vulnerable and we put ourselves out there and then someone hurts us, it hurts our heart. Have you ever had that feeling where you're just, you lose something, or you go through a really devastating breakup and you can't breathe, and it just feels like it feels like your heart is broken, and that is a terrible, terrible feeling. And those are the types of emotions that can get trapped in our heart area. When it comes to our lung and our colon are both attached. So when we trap certain emotions, they get trapped in our lung and our colon. Also, our lung and our heart can have certain emotions that get trapped, like grief. Grief is a significant one. You could be struggling with, maybe COPD or asthma or some sort of a heart condition. Ask yourself, have you processed the grief in your life? Is there some sort of a loss that you suffered? And it could be at a young age. It really could be. It doesn't have to be like in the past 6 months. It can be far away, and it can actually be generational as well. So maybe there was some sort of a grief that your mom suffered when you were in the womb and you absorbed that grief, and now you're struggling with asthma and COPD and a whole bunch of other ailments. Grief is notorious for getting stuck in the lungs and in the heart. Some other emotions that have a tendency to get stuck in the lung and the colon are rejection. That's a big one. And we've all suffered rejection before, and there's a fear of that rejection. Sadness and sorrow, those sit really heavily in the lungs, and those correspond with grief. Discouragement, we've all been discouraged in our life, and this could have happened in kindergarten. Maybe something happened to you that discouraged you, and then you started to have these really weird issues with your lungs, and you've had them for all these years, and you've just maybe masked them with some allergy meds and didn't really realize that it was actually a trapped emotion that wasn't processed, and now it's exacerbating itself and causing you some discomfort through various symptoms. Some other emotions that can get trapped in the lung and the colon are confusion, self-abuse, when we kind of self-sabotage ourselves or we abuse ourselves, especially from a mental standpoint. That can cause a lot of imbalance in our lungs and in our colon. Stubbornness, hi, that's one of the ones that I've probably struggled with the most, and this is a common trait amongst my ancestral lineage, is stubbornness. So I have been really working on releasing the stubbornness, not only in my own personal energetic field, but also from a generational standpoint as well. So those are just some of the emotions that can get trapped in those certain areas of the body. The spleen and the stomach go together, and some of the emotions that can get trapped there are a big one, anxiety, right? So think of it, when you have anxiety, your stomach gets really tense, and you can have some upset in the stomach, right? So that's just being exacerbated by those emotions that are running really strong in that solar plexus area of the body. Nervousness and worry, they all kind of go hand in hand, right? Anxiety, nervousness, worry, despair and disgust can also fit in there too, right? Like when you feel disgusted by something, then that is something that you could have some sort of symptoms that are running wild in your solar plexus or your stomach area. We don't really think of the spleen very much. It's kind of an organ that's just kind of chilling there, but the spleen does a lot of things for us, and that's a very predominant area where some of these emotions can get trapped. Some other emotions that can get trapped in the spleen and the stomach are failure, the feeling of failure. And we've all been through that before, where we felt like we failed. And you get that, that gut-wrenching feeling of, oh, well, what did I do? I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have attempted to do that. But, really failure is just a lesson for us to learn. If we fail at something, then we just know that that's not right for us, or not the right direction or the right path, or we need to take a look at it from a whole new perspective. So when we look at failure, we just need to look at it with a different set of eyes. But it is one that has a tendency to get stuck in our stomach. Also, lack of control. This is a big one for me, considering I have really been working on releasing a lot of the obsessive compulsive disorder that has run in my family lineage. And it's really tough to not have control over things. I know some of us, that's kind of our way of life, is really making sure that we have control, because it makes us feel stable and steadfast in our life. But many of us who have control issues have stomach issues too. Irritable bowel syndrome, ulcers possibly. Those types of things can come from having that feeling of really wanting to control things in our life. Helplessness, hopelessness, those feelings of despair, those can all sit really, really deeply into our colon and can cause us some of those bowel disruptions that are not so fun to deal with. Low self-esteem. All right. So low self-esteem is a big one. And this is one that, can really sit really tight in the stomach area. So when we have low self-esteem, we don't feel strong, we don't feel confident in ourselves. And when we have low self-esteem, we kind of have a tendency to want to hunch over and hunch our shoulders, which then hunches our stomach area, and it can cause our organs to really move around and sort of conform together. And that is an area where those emotions can really get trapped and cause us some, not so pleasant symptoms. Another area that can have emotions get caught up in it are the liver and the gallbladder. So the liver is that filtration system. That's one of the biggest organs in our body, and that's the organ that can really hold a tremendous amount of emotions. And we all know, we've all heard that the concept of an angry drunk, right? An angry drunk. So when you drink alcohol, the liver filters that alcohol, and that's where the emotion of anger can get trapped. So, and I working in organ transplant, I used to see a lot of recipients who were waiting for a liver transplant, and one of the common traits that they had was anger, and it was because their liver wasn't functioning properly, it wasn't flowing properly, and some of those emotions would get really trapped and stuck in there, as well as bitterness, right? So bitterness can get trapped in the gallbladder and cause a lot of harm there, whether it be gallstones or just discomfort in the gallbladder area. One of the big ones that I work with a lot of clients on is guilt. Okay, guilt really is one of the biggest ones that I think 99.9% of people have somewhere trapped in their body, and it's usually in the form of a very deeply seated emotion. Guilt isn't one that says, "Hey, I'm here, I'm standing out, time to be released." Guilt is one of those little guys that kind of burrows itself in there, and it gets really, really deep into the liver and into the gallbladder. So if you've ever gone through and done a whole body cleanse, and you started to notice all these emotions bubbling to the surface, anger, guilt, bitterness, resentment, hatred, you feel these really, really strong emotions, and you're like, why am I feeling this way? I'm just cleansing my body. Well, it's because your liver is being cleansed, and when your liver is cleansed, it's bringing all these emotions to the surface. And at first it may seem very, very startling, and you're like, why do I feel so much hatred towards this person, or why am I so resentful from a past relationship? And you're going through that cleansing process. So some herbs that you can use for the liver to help kind of, get you through that process are dandelion root, milk thistle. Those are some really good herbs that you can use. You can get them in a tea form. That's usually how I take them. The roasted dandelion tea is really good. And I usually combine the milk thistle in there. Those are some ones that can help cleanse that liver. So if you're feeling stuck or stagnant and you're having some of these deep-seated emotions, then you want to look at your liver, and you want to, try to find natural ways that you can cleanse that liver, because when you physically cleanse it, those emotions are going to come to be cleansed to the surface as well. And when you become consciously aware of what's going on, then it makes it a lot easier to move those emotions out, because like I said, they're magnetic. Some other emotions that can get trapped in the liver and the gallbladder are depression. Right. So when we have a sluggish liver, what we would call it in the healthcare field, a fatty liver, that's where the emotion of depression can sit. And when we aren't properly, going with the flow and filtering out all of the garbage and the toxins that are coming in through our food and through our environment and through our mind and through the news, all of these things that we're being bombarded with on a daily basis. The liver is filtering these guys out, and our liver is working on overdrive. And if we aren't, filtering it out fast enough, then it's getting stuck and it's causing those symptoms of depression. Indecisiveness is a big one. That was one that I kind of was vacillating with a lot. Like, should I move here? Should I move there? Should I quit this job and start this? Should I do that? Should I do that? Very indecisive, sitting on the fence all the time and not really taking a strong affirmative, stance or action in one direction. I was really stuck. And I started to cleanse my liver. I started to do certain things that I could do to cleanse that area. And it was amazing how things just started to slowly start moving forward in a direction. I started to choose a path and actually follow that path and actually move in that direction. And it all started because I started to cleanse my liver and started taking herbs and different supplements that would help that particular organ flourish, right? Panic is a big one. And I think we've all suffered panic at some point in our life. So if you seem to have panic attacks a lot, or you're in a panicky state, then take a look at cleansing your liver. You may notice a difference when you start to take some of those herbs and supplements to try and release whatever those blockages are in your liver. You will probably notice that your panic attacks will start to go down. Another area that we struggle with a lot, and this is where a significant amount of emotions get trapped, are the kidneys and the bladder area. So specifically for women, I know, for me, this was an area where I was like, wow, I spent a lot of time in this area cleansing a lot of these emotions and working on releasing them. So some of the emotions that are pretty significant that can get trapped in these areas are fear, big one, fear, dread, horror, and just overall feeling peeved, feeling, frustrated or annoyed by things in your life. And this is an area where fear really sits in the kidneys. So maybe you're struggling with kidney stones or some sort of a bladder problem. You may want to look at, what are you afraid of in your life? Is there something that's coming to the surface for you that you aren't facing? Maybe you're in a relationship and you know that it's not working out and you want to move forward, moving out of that relationship, but you're terrified. You're terrified of being alone. You're terrified of, what the future holds, and you're having bladder leakage problems, or maybe you're having a kidney stone. Take a look at that. Take a look at, what are you afraid of? What are you not facing in your life? Conflict is a big one that gets stuck in the kidneys as well. Are you having a lot of conflict in your life? Is there something that you're really struggling with to find inner peace and balance around? Creative insecurity. So the kidneys and the bladder fall into the sacral chakra area, and the sacral chakra, the color is orange, and that's where our creative center sits, right? So that's where we create. For women, that's where we create babies, and for men and women, that's where we create a lot of our passion and our things that we want to follow in our life. That's where our inspiration comes from, our motivation. And when that area gets blocked, it can cause a lot of disruption, right? A lot of disruption. So if there's an area that you're just feeling really creatively blocked, then you might want to take a look at working on cleansing out those kidneys. And when, there's many ways that you can clear these organs that I'm talking about. You can either do it through a physical cleanse, or you can actually do it through what I do is the emotion code when I'm working with clients. So like I said in the beginning, emotions are magnetic. So what I do with clients is I actually connect to their energy, and I use applied kinesiology, which is a form of muscle testing, to test what is going on in that area of the body. Is there some sort of an emotion that is stuck? And if there is, then we just use a magnet to eliminate that. So it's kind of like, I explain it like a credit card, right? So you've got a credit card and you have all your information on it, and it's working properly, but the moment you take a magnet and you swipe it, over that credit card, it eliminates its capability of being able to be used, right? It eliminates that information on the credit card. Or if you've had a hotel key card, it's kind of similar, right? You swipe it with a magnet, it just resets that entire card. That's how our energetic system works as well. So when we have that emotion and we bring it from the subconscious mind, from being trapped in the body, to the conscious mind, and then we're eliminating it magnetically, and we don't have to do it magnetically. It's just that it works pretty quick when you do that, but you can also do it through intention. So if you know that there's a particular emotion that is trapped in your body, then you can bring it to the conscious and then intentionally release that. So there's a variety of ways that you can do that by releasing those emotions. And I just wanted to talk about that for a minute, because you're probably thinking, well, geez, I have all these trapped emotions, and then now how the heck do I get rid of them? There's so many ways you can do it: through mindfulness, meditation, EFT tapping, which is another modality that I do. And if you're ever interested in booking a session with me, then just visit my website, www.thesoulcafe.org, and you can learn more, about the different modalities that I utilize when I'm working with people to help release these trapped emotions. But you can do them on your own too. You just have to know the route and the modality to use to be able to do that. And I always say, go with your heart. Whatever your heart is telling you to do, then follow that, right? Because the heart is our compass. It's our GPS system. It's our mechanism of following the right path. Okay. So the feeling of being unsupported also fits in the kidney and the bladder section. So for me, I talked a little bit about moving from Florida to Washington in my last video. And when I first got here, I didn't have anybody here, to help me. And I started to get very, very severe lower back pain, debilitating lower back pain. And I could not figure out what it was from. I'm like, what is going on? Well, about a week or 2 weeks ago, my parents visited me and my back pain started to go away. And I thought, what is happening? Well, I began to realize that my back pain was a symptom of feeling unsupported. I was out here all alone. I was doing all these things by myself, and I was struggling with such severe back pain because I was feeling unsupported. And now I'm, getting out there, I'm meeting friends, and I've got, a few friends who have moved in, to the area. So I'm feeling much more supported in where I am than I was, 8 months ago. So for me, it was very eye-opening because I was looking at this from a physical standpoint, and it really was an emotional issue that I was having that didn't really come to the surface until I got the support that I needed. And the moment I got it, my issues started to dissolve. So those are some of the emotions that sit in the kidneys. Now, we also have one more kind of compartmentalized area that we all really, as a collective, have a lot of emotions that need to be cleared, and that is our glands, like our thyroid gland, our thymus gland, and our sexual organs. This is an area that I think as a collective, we have all been abused at some point. Maybe not physically, but it could be emotionally, mentally, or spiritually abused at some point. So some of those emotions that sit in that area, which would be the sacral chakra area as well, are going to be jealousy, longing, lust, humiliation. That's a big one. I think we could have been humiliated as kids or shamed in some sort of way. And now that kind of sits in our reproductive area. So when I work with especially women who may be having some sort of problem conceiving or having some sort of, maybe endometriosis or something like that, I usually go straight to these emotions and see, okay, well, at what point in our life we muscle test, did we experience this particular emotion? And is it generational? It could be generational. Like I said before, when we're sitting in our mother's wombs, we are like little sponges soaking up all of the emotions that she's experiencing. And it even can go back even farther than that. We're soaking up her emotions that she experienced in the womb of her mom, right? So as women, we are really soaking that in, and men too, because we all experience those types of emotions. Some other emotions that can get caught in those sexual glands are going to be some pretty big ones: shock, and the feeling of being unworthy or worthlessness. And those are those body issues that we may have, that negative self-talk that we may have about our weight or the way we look or the way we feel about ourselves. Those get trapped in those sexual organs. And when we have sexual intercourse with others, we actually intertwine our energy, and we can pick up on some of those energetic magnetic emotions that person may have experienced in their past too. So as being an empath, I've learned that it's important to cleanse our own energy because we are constantly picking up, like little magnets, little sponges, everybody else's energy around us. So those are some of the emotions that can get trapped in the body. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this amazing book that I utilize with my clients as well. And it's from Carol K. Truman, and it's called Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. Now, it does come in a book, but I bought the flip chart, and I love this because you can actually go in there and take a look at what is your issue or your ailment, and it tells you specifically what the emotion is that's attached to that particular circumstance. And what I've begun to realize is that our emotions are like onions, okay? So we may have an emotion on the top that, you know, could be jealousy, but then if we go deeper and deeper, it could lead to what's called abandonment, right? So if we go really deep into the onion and start to peel away all of those layers, we begin to realize that there's a lot more emotions that are, you know, could be trapped. So in a session with a client, usually if it's the first session, I will kind of start on the surface to see where we're at, and then if the energy allows me to go deeper, I will. But if it doesn't, then usually in the second session, I can go a little bit deeper and find out what the root cause is to, you know, to that particular issue. Maybe they're on a subconscious level aren't really ready to experience the release of that particular emotion that could be trapped. And if they aren't ready for that, then it could be really, kind of difficult for them to release that particular emotion. So I highly suggest you look into this book. If you're feeling like you're resonating with my topic today that I'm talking about, then definitely take a look at this book. I think you will really, really enjoy it. So when I work with clients, I use a combination of different modalities. I use the emotion code and EFT tapping, emotional freedom techniques, where you tap on different acupressure points and say certain statements to bring up the emotion or the issue from the subconscious mind to the conscious mind to be released. And I am also level 3 certified in Reiki, which I don't utilize as much, but I do utilize it depending on the situation with each individual client. So every session for me looks different, when it comes to that client, and depending on whatever the issue, ailment, symptom that they're coming to me with, we're just kind of going where the energy is taking me. So, they may have an issue in their lower back, and somehow I'm releasing something from their shoulder because it could be connected at some point. Because like I said, it's all like an onion. As you begin to peel away those layers, it's every layer that you peel away gets you closer and closer to that root issue.